Hey everyone, this is Adam.
And this is Rod from Tier 5. Whether you're talking about your favorite awful card or just discussing your ladder experience, Tier 5 is something for you. You're about to listen to Concede, the top of Tier 1 Hearthstone podcasts.
Greetings.
Hello.
Greet.
My greeting.
Well met.
I greet you.
Greetings, traveler. Greetings, friend.
The pleasure is mine.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to episode 157 of Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. From the Maelstrom, Louisiana, it's me, Appa, and we're going to switch it up this week, because I usually go to Hat second, but we're going to go to Boticus. From Cares in California, it's Boticus. How you doing?
Hi, it's me. I'm not going to be like Hat and do a long intro like he always does about talking about things and stuff, and then you get to ignoring me.
Get dunked on, Hat. Speaking of Hat, from Gadgets in New York, we have RidiculousHat. How are you doing, Hat?
Hello.
What's up, Eeyore?
I don't want to talk over my friends.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, not this. Not
Welcome
like
to Coin Concede, where Hat makes us feel bad.
I've been relegated to the end. Everyone put me to the end. And Aaron's like, oh, I'm not going to do what Hat does. What do I do?
All right, next week, I'm going to go last, then, to make you feel better. You're going to go first.
It's honestly, this is probably better. This is probably better to avoid any prep-related digressions.
We'll get into that, I'm sure, in a little bit here.
In actually the immediate next section. And actually the literal next thing we're going to talk about.
Well, the next thing we're going to talk about is Patreon.
Well, no, after that. That's more important.
Coin Concede is supported in large part by you, the listener. So if you'd like to find out how you can support us and receive rewards in return, head on over to patreon.com/CoinConcede. And speaking of patrons, big thanks to Earthshatter for becoming our newest patron.
Yay.
Thanks.
Yay.
I should get a shorter soundbite for celebrating because the only one I have is a little longer. But
yeah.
Thanks, Earthshatter.
Anyways, so let's talk about our past week on ladder in life. How's it been, Hat? See, you're going first now.
Yeah, this is probably a mistake, but I appreciate it. So, this past week I was actually super duper sick. Since like Thursday, I've been just kind of out of sorts. So today is the first day I feel human again, and I celebrated by finding a list from Gyong, who, as many of you know, is the miracle person. Like, just super good. He hit rank 1 legend because, of course, he did with the list. I think it was about where you talked about last, where there's no sprint and no gadget, but one Myra's unstable element.
Yeah, I remember seeing that recently. It's very strange, and it doesn't have. I would expect a list like that to have something like Sinister Strike, because I figured you'd be going face after you play Myra's just to get them dead. But
I mean, it has the one shadow step, and it does play. It fits in all the cards that you have to kind of shave to make Miracle work. It has the Fireflies and the Shivs and the double SI and the one shadow step. Doesn't have any consistent draw power. It's weird, but I enjoyed it, and I did enjoy the opportunity today to keep double prep just for the sole purpose of tilting Boticus. I want to point out I didn't win that game, but I did make Bot mad, and really that was worth it.
He kept double prep, snapped off that screenshot real quick.
That is completely accurate. I was like, I should throw one of these back, but wait a second.
Man, it would have been so extra tilting if you had won that game, because I was trying to decide after I saw that screenshot if I was more tilted that you probably won that game, because otherwise why would you post that screenshot and tag me on Twitter, or if I was more tilted that you probably, if you won that game, it would have been because you had Firefly and Faldori Strider in your opening hand, which are just two of the best cards in the deck. And then, yeah, of course you can keep a prep in your opening hand. I would have been perfectly okay with keeping a prep in that hand, because those cards are just great to have when you have the minions. The problem is when you have the traditional rogue hand and you're keeping a prep, and then you don't draw an early game creature, and then you just lose to them doing things, doing pretty much anything. And that's been my argument this whole time. But small amount of justice on my side that you lost that game, but I will admit you got the moral victory.
Yeah, I tweeted it despite the loss for this moment right here, for exactly what just happened.
You just keep double preps and just play a dire roll, and you're like, I'm dead. No.
My purpose of keeping double prep was solely to make your blender whir of just this kind of internal rage compass on the show.
Well, I can appreciate that. That was a good.
Which is also
that was a good one.
Why in United Hearthstone League, I managed to hit one Daniel Stormraid Sheldon in one of the most entertaining best of fives I played in a while. But game 5, he was playing Spectral Cutlass Burgle Rogue, and I had a turn 2 Lore Walker Cho. And that was another card that I played, well, first because he required me to, but only because I told him I had one in Golden from that week. And it was one of the most fun best of 5 series I have seen in a while, but I did in fact win because of turn 2 Lore Walker Cho. So
I watched that game. That whole series was just a meme of a series, and there definitely was a game where the turn before you won, your opponent played a Mukla and a Cairn.
That is what happened.
Oh my gosh.
It was so that series, for those of you that didn't listen to last week's episode yet, which you can't because it isn't out as of the time of this recording. It will be in about 3 hours. So you'll be hearing that before you hear this, unless you're a patron, in which case you heard it already. You get the idea. The series was we restricted our own decks, where we each had to play with one set and basic and classic per deck, and it had to be a different set for each deck. So I played... What? Weren't you here last week when I talked about this? Did you not realize that?
No, looking good.
It was great.
Looking good in the chat.
Okay, so Wicked Good raised a valid point. What if Lore Walker Cho could be killed by Scorpomatic? Now we talked about this last week as well. Unfortunately, Scorpomatic was not in Boomsday. It was in KNC. And so in KNC I played Recruit Astral Tiger Druid with Scorpomatic. So my Grizzled Guardians,
my neighbor up.
My Grizzled Guardians and my Oaken Summons could have gotten the Scorpomatic, except the one game I played with it, he came down on 2. That was a turn 2 Scorp.
I especially loved that game because I know exactly why you kept Scorpomatic, and it's because you had an Oaken Summons in hand. And you're like, I really don't want to get Scorpomatic off this Oaken Summons. We'll just keep it in the opener.
I played it because it's not just about winning, it's about sending a message. So, I was playing KNC Recruit Druid, Boomsday Mech Paladin, and KFT Free Shaman, which was every single card that had the word freeze or frozen on it, except Cryostasis, because I'm not making that. Every single card that says freeze or frozen, that was legal. And he had Witchwood Burgle Rogue. He had, I think, what kind of Paladin did he have? I forget what kind of Paladin he had, but it beat my face in pretty quickly. Oh no, he had KFT Paladin. He had Frozen Throne Paladin. Yeah. And then he had Taunt Warrior, the Angoro Taunt Warrior. And the Taunt Warrior game was also amazing. It was so good against the Paladin. That was really, really good. It was super fun.
There's so many games in that series that definitely looked like it was very much going one way and then did not go that way at all.
Yeah. It reminded me why Hearthstone was fun, and it was some of the most fun I've had in a while. And it turns out also turn 2 Cho against a deck that's all Burgle spells is very, very good. So don't craft it, but go watch those games. They're on my Twitch channel from my perspective, and Storm Ranges from his perspective. Really enjoyable. So, yeah, that was my week. How about you, Appa? Can you speak yet?
Sort of. So, my week was overall pretty good. I've been playing a lot of Even Warlock on ladder because I enjoy the deck a lot. And I'm up to rank 2 on NA. I've been bouncing between 4 and 5 stars all day yesterday. I don't think I played a game of Hearthstone yet today because I've been doing a bunch of stuff. But I haven't been on EU yet. I'm trying to focus on one server, hit Legend on that, and then go to the next one. Because the way I usually do it is I kind of just jump between both servers a bunch and like never really focus on one and never really finish the Legend like climb until like 20 days into the month. since I'm trying to go for points, I figured I should just buckle down and get legend on at least one first, and then I can jump between the two. But anyways, rank 2 on NA with even Warlock. But my day has been interesting. And I posted about this in the Discord. So I had a little bit of story time for the podcast today, and I saved this for y'all. So, as many of you know, I am in college, and that means it's extremely expensive, and I rely on financial aid. So my financial aid refund got dispersed on September 25th, and on the website for the accounting office for our school, it says, please allow up to 14 days for this to be basically credited to your bank account with direct deposit or sent to you in the mail. And on my way to school today, since today is the 9th, that would make this the 14th day. And I woke up this morning and I checked my bank account. I'm like, nope, still poor. Cool. And then I checked the mail on the way to school. It's like, nope, no mail, still poor. So I went to the accounting office on my way out of class today, and I went up to the window and I was like, hey, where's my money? Help me. I'm broke. Give me money, please. And the guy working there, he said, yeah, we didn't put it in direct deposit. We just sent it as a regular physical check to so-and-so address. I'm like, that's not my address. That's my old address. I changed my address with the university like 2 months ago. And he's like, oh, well, that's where it got sent. You should go get it back. I'm like, well, the people who live there. So a little bit of background. So Taylor and I have been trying to make this room like a really cool game room. So we got like gaming chairs and LED strips and stuff, and we ordered those from Amazon. And the first time she ordered a gaming chair and LED strips, they got sent to our old address. And the people who live there are scum. They're just straight up scum. They did not return the chair or the LED strips. They just took them. How do I know this? Because Amazon and the UPS driver confirmed this, that they were never sent back. They were delivered, and they've just been at the apartment ever since. So they just got a sweet gaming chair and some LED strips, apparently. So my financial aid check got sent to the scum house. So I voiced my concerns to this accounting employee at the university, and he looks at me and he says, well, might have to contact the DA. I'm like, you serious, dude? You serious right now? You didn't use my direct deposit that I set up. You sent my check to these scum live in New Orleans, and you're not going to help me? So basically what he said was, I can check tomorrow and see if they cashed it, and then if they did, we'll stop it, and then you'll have to contact the DA in New Orleans. And I'm like, okay, neat. So my days got started on the wrong foot, but it took a pretty dramatic upturn towards the middle of the day. I've been having a good day since, but that was an interesting start to the day. So I might have to deal with the district attorney in New Orleans next week or something. If they were dumb enough to try and cash a check. So yeah, that was something else.
Okay, so here's the bright side I just thought of, all right? So maybe if they tried to cash the check, that means that you could, and you have to go to the DA, maybe you can get the gaming chair and the LED strips back along with the check, and then you're not down those as well.
Just be like, look,
Right side.
I'm taking these. These are mine. Give them back.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so what I want you to do, go to their apartment and knock on the door. And when they answer, just hold up a little exclamation mark over your head with a little dagger. And chances are they'll just concede and throw the stuff at you. People concede when they see Quest Rogue. Just be a Quest Rogue. You think that'll work?
No.
Nope.
Are you sure?
Not.
I just think like people give up when they see the exclamation mark. So just put them in that situation.
I do appreciate the effort.
Speaking of giving up when you see a quest rogue, if you're done, Appa, we could get into my week.
Yeah, I'm good. I just wanted to.
I mean,
Talk
I am
about,
very
like-
sorry to hear that that happened. That does suck.
My life is nonsense. There's just like bad beat after bad beat in the most ridiculous ways. So I just wanted to bring bring that to y'all. I am in a positive mood, and I feel like everything will work out. But man, it's crazy.
That's a pretty bad beat.
You're good, Bauticus.
Okay, so my week started out still really excited because I had found the Xerix Cloning Gallery Priest, so I was playing the crap out of it. I kept jamming games, and I was going somewhere before last week, and then I stopped going anywhere because I was at the rank 5 floor and was getting a little frustrated, so I queued up Odd Warrior because I was seeing a lot of aggro and I just wanted to beat some faces in with some tank up. And it actually has been going really well. I got to rank 4, feeling pretty good about that. But the only enjoyable part for me about Odd Warrior is when the victory screen comes out and everything else sucks. I am not a fan of this deck. I'm not a fan of the play style. Even when I'm beating up all of these aggressive decks, it's not fun for me. So I do enjoy winning. I don't enjoy playing Odd Warrior, and I especially don't enjoy the 30-minute game I played earlier of the Odd Warrior mirror that I ended up losing, because that was just a huge waste of time. I was very close to just conceding at the start just so I didn't have to play it. But yeah, that was not a lot of fun.
It's really funny because I feel with you on this a lot. I don't play a lot of Odd Warrior because I also don't find it too compelling. But that's Taylor's last golden class, not counting Rogue, because she's never getting golden Rogue. So she's been playing a good bit of Odd Warrior, and she sits literally right next to me. So I just like live vicariously through her when she's doing that on ladder. And I feel like she's not really playing Hearthstone. I feel like when you're playing Odd Warrior, you're just like sitting outside of school, just like role playing a crossing guard. And whenever aggro comes by, you just hold up the stop sign and you just look at them. Like,
Yeah.
Halt, citizen, you cannot pass.
That's a perfect analogy. Every time I was just see a Zoo Warlock or a Tempo Mage, and I'm just tank up, you do no damage. Tank up, you do no damage. Tank up, Reckless Flurry, all your stuff is dead. Okay, then I tank up again. And then the games are just not compelling. I just press tank up
You're
every
role
turn
playing
and they lose.
as the DMV. Just like they try and do something, you're like, nah. And they finally like they play a couple minions, they get to the front of the line, and then you're like, no, you were supposed to be in the other line.
And then Quest Rogue is the really obnoxious person who threatens to see the manager, and you're like, all right, fine, go. Come on. Just get up here. Shut up.
Yeah. Well, I tried to make a Quest Rogue analogy earlier, and it was rebuffed, so I'm not going to make one now.
I think you mean it was renerfed, if we're following the way Quest Rogue goes.
Yeah, well, renerfed means apparently still around, so I don't know how to analogize that.
All right, let's get into the news.
So we're really not going to bring up analogize as a word. We make a huge deal out of degradate. But analogize is just okay.
Do you think that's not a word?
I don't, but is it?
I think it's a word.
Pretty sure it's a word. We can make a big deal out of this now. Oh, I'm very excited to make a big deal out of this.
Analogize. Verb. Make a comparison of something with something else to assist understanding. Hold on.
I'm the worst.
So, episode title, are you changing it or am I changing it?
Degradate. Nope. Ain't finding nothing.
This is a great episode. This is my favorite episode so far.
kind
I don't
hats,
even want to
right?
do the news anymore. Okay, so choose your champion is live. You could do that.
You sound
Welcome
so
to Coin
sad.
Concede, episode 157. Analogize.
Nah, we're gonna. There's gonna be a title, and I don't know what it is. We will reference this obliquely at some point. I'm trying to decide if we want to go for the high road or the low road. We'll figure it out.
Always the low road. I
Doesn't
mean,
Wicked
have to
Good
be.
in chat says this podcast is quickly turning into the old married couple of Hearthstone.
Yes, but that's compelling content. I hope. Our downloads are fine. Don't worry about it, Steve. It's okay.
who'd you guys choose for choose your champion?
Appa, you go first.
Appa.
Hold on. I'm trying to work in a way that I can use analogize in this sentence. Can't figure one
Okay,
out.
so I'll go first. I picked Bloodyface because Bloodyface is a cool dude, and he has been playing Hearthstone like he is a Magic pro from a while ago, and whenever he plays Hearthstone, he does well. We met on the ladder. We were playing Freeze Mage versus Control Warrior. I think that I was the Freeze Mage, and I think I won the game, but I don't remember. I remember the Freeze Mage won the game. I can't remember if I lost or I won, because that was in the meta where I had two notable games where I lost one as the good matchup and won one as the bad matchup. I forget, but he added me after. He's like, "Are you the Ridiculous Hat that played years ago in that one pro tour that one time?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he apparently his chat had remembered me, and we interacted a bit, and he was really, really nice and very gracious. And whenever he plays Hearthstone, he does really well. We stayed connected in the game, and he took some time off of Hearthstone, then came back, and then qualified for Worlds. And while he was testing this past week, he accidentally hit Rank 1 Legend while testing. And I said, I want to pick the guy that accidentally hits Rank 1 Legend. So I picked him. Super cool dude. I know that his lineup is, I think, we'll talk about it later, I don't think is as favored as I would have cared for it to be. But I did pick him because I have faith.
Appa, who'd you choose?
All right. Well, I picked Rivius because reasons. I mean, this should be well known at this point. I really like South Korea a lot. Like a lot.
Right.
Like capital A space capital LOT.
Well, it's interesting, though, that he's a known quest rogue, like, master, and he picked Odd Rogue. That's super weird to me.
Which I really like, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But I chose him because I like him, and I like the members of his team, one of them being Young, the Madman, Myra's Unstable Element, Miracle Rogue player. But I like his lineup a lot. I did some like brackets where I went through lineups with expected bans and stuff, and I actually have him making it out of his group and actually winning 2-0 in the group. So it'll be interesting to see if that'll actually happen. But I didn't just pick him because I'm a fanboy of him. I am, but that wasn't the main reason. I actually went through like matchups and stuff and tried to be impartial when choosing. I wanted to go with the person that I legitimately thought gave me the best chance, and it was between him and I think Island Cat, but I chose Rivius. So
Cool. Well, I chose JustSaiyan because I like a guy with confidence, and he said packs are safe with him, so I chose him, and also it's JustSaiyan, and he wins a lot. So
Well, he does now. Before, he won almost a lot. And there was a long period of time where he was kind of known for making it to elimination rounds and then throwing on camera. And I'm really, really glad he's worked past that. Because I do think there's been something in his game that he's been working on to avoid that internal pressure getting to him. He's been playing out of his mind lately. He's been really, really great the past 6 months or so. And so I think that's a really reasonable choice. And well, we'll talk about his bracket a little bit, but I think he's pretty well situated.
sweet. Can't wait to see that happens this weekend, right?
Yes, the 11th through the 14th.
Sweet.
yeah,
So,
I'm really excited because I get to watch that and make content for it for an undisclosed organization. Anyways, it's gonna be a lot of fun.
So the next little news item we have here was an administrative ruling that got the Chinese Taipei team disqualified from the Hearthstone Global Games. Apparently, some information came out, a video was posted, and according to the statement, at least 3 of the players on the Chinese Taipei team were watching their match streamed, even though it was on a delay, and used some of the information from the delay. I believe it was a mind control tech that was burned from a tracking, and they were able to use that information to their advantage and ended up getting disqualified from the Hearthstone Global Games. A statement came out from Tom60229, who is probably the most well-known player on that team, essentially saying that he did not partake in the stream cheating that happened, but also did not report it and accepts the punishment that is given to them, but also notes that there are a lot of other things that are happening that are unfair that do not receive punishment, and kind of has led to a bit of a discussion. I wanted to kind of ask you guys about this, what you think about the ruling, the decision. To me, it kind of seems fairly standard and pretty unfortunate that the team did this on stream, but it sounds like this isn't the only thing happening. What's kind of your take on this whole situation?
So, Tom's statement, it does start with an apology. We want to make sure we make that clear. And it is also in Chinese, so we are relying on Google Translate, as well as Twitter dissemination of this report. But this has come up a few times in the past few weeks in discussion, and I think it deserves some level of attention that there might be a lot of integrity and ethics violations in Hearthstone and how it's being played online. A lot of these tournaments are local and unregulated. There's spectator issues, both in-client and out-of-client. There's busy mode issues. We talked about the issue about a month ago with Sequinox and Akumaker, where there's opportunity for gray area there. And there's, if you look at this statement, some online regulations they involve refereeing match live as spectators, but then it could actually be a friend watching instead of a referee. When you set busy, you can't get notification from people. That there are people that are actually playing with other friends through Skype, and some regulations might be unnecessary but actually get people to be DQ'd. So there's a lot of complications with how online Hearthstone is working from an ethical standpoint, and Tom says, we're sorry, we'll take responsibility, we accept the punishment, but this is not the only thing that's happening. I don't know. I don't have a lot of experience with that, but this isn't the first time I've heard it, and it seems to be a conversation that's increasing in frequency in recent times.
Yeah, it's really interesting going from kind of my background of all of our background of Magic the Gathering, which has had persistent issues and is always kind of a constant topic of cheating. With a live game, it's kind of different but similar in the online world on the ways that you can gain unfair advantages. And Appa, I know you've played both, and this is a situation I'm sure has come up similarly before. What's kind of your take on this whole situation?
So, whenever I'm trying to digest a cheating like scandal or something like that, I tend to stay away from gray areas. I am pretty black and white whenever it comes to cheating. Like, if you do something that is considered cheating, like I don't think you should be in the competitive space. If, again, this is in Chinese and translated, so this is many steps removed from what Tom's actual statement is, because I don't read Chinese. But if he if he knew this was happening and he did not report it, which is kind of the idea that I'm getting from this. And again, I'm not sure if this is exactly what he said or if it's translation issue or what. But if he knew this was happening and he did not report it, he is complicit and he is a cheater. That is my just end of story for me. And if that's the case, and our previous world champion is knowingly complicit in cheating, I do not think he should retain that title. Personally, I think cheating is one of the scummiest things you can do in a card game, and I have no respect for anybody that cheats ever. Growing up where I did, playing Magic, I will not drop any names, but they're around me. I actually did not know this at the time, but one of my really good friends asked me a couple years ago, actually, whenever I first started playing Hearthstone a lot. He was like, you started getting really good at Magic. How often did you cheat? And I was like, the hell are you talking about? What does that mean? And he was like, yeah, like everybody around like all the good players cheated like in different ways. I'm like, what? Who was this? And then he like started showing me examples. I'm like, what the heck are you talking about? That's nuts. And he was like, yeah, so like what did you do? I'm like, nothing. I just focused on my technical play and watched a bunch of Magic videos and bettered myself. Like, what? So I lost a lot of respect for a lot of people, and I have zero respect for anybody that cheats knowingly, like who actively tries to gain an advantage, basically, is how I can say that. Because I mean, there are some things that could happen in tournaments that could be considered like cheating against the rules. Like maybe you like accidentally disconnect your Ethernet cable or something by like hitting your hand against it at a LAN or something. Like there's things that could happen like that. But I mean, this seems like just really, really blatant cheating, and knowing about it and not reporting it is being complicit. And you can believe me when I say this or not, but if I ever got to be on like the American HGG team and my teammates were doing this, I would absolutely report it, because I would never want it to come out that happened and me not say something, because I mean, I honestly just have more self-respect than that. I was raised in a way that like valued honesty above a lot of things and competitive integrity. So this honestly, again, I'm trying to distance myself kind of emotionally from this, because we are getting this through translation. So it may not be the same as Tom intended it to be, but this makes me pretty significantly upset that this is like the world champion from last year.
Yeah, I mean, if all that is true, then I tend to agree with you that it's pretty upsetting news to hear, and it sounds like it's also not just him, not just this team, and it's kind of hard because you want to believe in the purity of the game and the competition, and to hear that that's not always the case it's not good for the look on the competitive scene. It's pretty unfortunate. Do we have anything else we want to talk about here before we move on?
Now we'll keep an eye out for either better translations or more statements, but as of right now, it seems like this is the sum total of the punishment that's going to come out, and we'll keep you informed if there's anything more.
All right. Only a couple little news items left. There's a Art of Hearthstone book that is going to be released. It's going to be available in the Blizzard store and at BlizzCon. There is a standard copy, which is $45, as well as a collector's edition, which is, I believe, $125. Only 1,000 copies will be available and will be signed by the development team. This is pretty cool. I hope to at least get a peek at this while I'm at BlizzCon. But yeah, not a whole lot to do. Not a whole lot with this, but there's a little preview of the spread, which looks pretty sick.
Yeah, I actually like these kind of things a lot. Like, I'm just a big nerd in general, and some of my favorite types of books, like if I go to a bookstore or something and I'm just browsing, I really like going to the section where they have the like what's it called? Like prototypes of artworks and stuff for different movies. Like some of my favorite kinds of books are like this, but with like Star Wars and like their initial concepts and stuff like that, and seeing all the behind the scenes, like different renditions things went through art wise. So whenever this was announced, I actually didn't think too much of it. But now that I saw the little snapshot and stuff, I'll probably actually try and get one while we're at BlizzCon because this looks really cool.
Why is the book not called Hearthstone?
Damn it, Hat.
I'm personally offended.
It's because you're not working for them, Hat. You got to get in there with all these ideas.
You mean literally the one idea, which is just a pun?
I mean, I'm sure there's about 1 million puns that you could give them ideas for. Just give it a little time. You come up with 10 puns per episode anyway, so I'm sure some of them could sneak over there.
Well, I come up with about 10 puns per episode, but usually they don't make you laugh. In fact, last episode I made 10, but no pun in 10 did.
Oh my god.
I was gonna try to move on.
You had that one waiting.
I did, yes.
That man crafted that one up while he was laying in bed sick, and he was like, I'm firing this off.
Yeah. And now we have the name of the episode. It's going to be No Pun Intended. Okay. I'm now happy.
Honestly, that was a good one.
Thank you.
It caught me off guard. I had to process.
Yeah. I have that effect on people, which is...
Yeah, Hat likes to say a lot of puns that are over our heads so we can feel like him.
Oh my god. What is happening? Welcome to Coin Concede, everybody.
Sorry if that was too brutal. Anyway, the next news item we have on here is...
The next news item we have is that no, you're not.
Yeah, I'm not.
Okay.
Is an advanced hand tracking video. I don't remember if we brought this up in the news section when the initial hand tracking video from the Hearthstone site came out, but this one's kind of interesting. It goes a little bit more into some of the slightly more, I guess, advanced ways of hand tracking. Although the example they give was it illustrated it well, which is just if they have a card that's been in their hand and they're playing Miracle Rogue and it's been in their hand for a really long time, it's probably Leroy Jenkins because you almost never play that card unless you're about to win.
This actually segues really nicely into that little snapshot that Hat made us look at later on. I didn't even think about that, but this is very relevant to what we're going to talk about later.
Yeah, so if you're looking for this, I mean we've brought it up a few times on the show, but it's an interesting video, even though it had 5 mana Kobold Lackey in it, so it was a little jarring that it had an example.
Oh, Possessed
from
Lackey.
So long ago. Possessed Lackey, sorry.
Yeah.
So it was kind of interesting they chose specifically that situation for the video, but I'm kind of nitpicking it. It had some good information in there. And then the last news item we have on here is the versus meta polarity report. And this is actually going to be our Decksplanations topic, so I don't want to get into it too much, but there's been a lot of discussion about this, at least in our Discord and on Twitter. So we'll get into that in depth in the Decksplanations segment. And that's all we had for the news. Let's get into tournaments.
It's the grand tournament!
All right, so tournament report, and big props to Appa for doing most of this while he was incapacitated for most of the day. Semi-capacitated?
I literally did this while I was laying on the table in physical therapy with a heating pad wrapped around my leg. I was like, I got nothing else to do. Might as well do the show notes.
That sounds kind of okay, though.
Yeah, it made my very painful leg feel significantly less painful. And then they put me on a bike, and then that hurt a lot.
Yeah. Well, that's Good. Well, thanks for doing the tournament. No. And we had HCT Singapore this past week. It was Conquest format. And this top 16 is actually insane. It is super duper stacked. Naviute won the tournament over Faley. I believe it's Naviute's first big win. The top 4, Naviute beat Casie and Faley beat Krebo. In the top 8, we had Tyler, Lambie Series, Blitzchung, and Muzzy. And our top 16 had still more good players. Arrowy, JustSaiyan, Hunter Ace, Blood Trail, Tom60229, PNC, Ender, and Kuonet. Good lord. This tournament. So many of these players are qualified for HCT or are Hunter Ace or otherwise. The winning lineup that Naviute played was Taunt Druid, Egg Hunter, Quest Rogue, and Q-Block. Kind of a funky lineup, but what Taunt Druid says to me is that he wants to beat other Druids. That is kind of what this entire lineup says.
This lineup screams, please play Malfurion against me. I am slamming that.
And so, interestingly, the Quest Rogue matchup against Token Druid doesn't seem all that great, but it's Naviute. He plays really well, and I think the other 3 decks are pretty well situated. Egg Hunter's kind of okay against Token Druid, but the other 2 decks are just slam dunk wins there, so I think he really, really wanted to beat Druid, and this is kind of the lineup that he brought, and it worked out pretty well for him. And that's the only major tournament we have from this week, though we did have the Listener League. We finally made it to the top 8. We've got quite the top 8 cut. Momo's Dad and Arrow. Momo's Dad came in at the 1 seed. Schwal versus Totino's Pizza. Nikolai's versus Rebobson, a rematch of the NA versus EU tournament. And Cinder versus Picky Mickey. So the quarterfinals are going to be this week. We've got semis and finals next week. Stay tuned for information on that. Now, as far as the tournament meta goes, of the decks in the top 16... well, the most popular was still Druid. 10 Malygos Druids, oddly enough, because we'd seen such a major swing to Token, and so we're back to Malygos Druid. I'm going to pause for a second here. Are we sure this tournament wasn't LHS? This is such a weird lineup. I'm going to look.
Wait, what?
I don't think this tournament was LHS, but these lineups are so weird. Conquest, okay.
I thought...
Yeah, it's Conquest.
Yeah.
He's just looking to target super hard.
Yeah, but so the 10 Malygos Druids is really interesting when you look at how the Conquest tournaments over the past couple weeks have shifted so hard towards Token. We see a really, really major shift here as players adjust their bans and their strategies. And you can look at these strategies, you see a lot of ban rogue archetypes coming. Right? You see 10 Malygos Druids, 2 Taunt, 1 Token, 1 Togwaggle. The 13 Warlocks that were played, 11 Even, 1 Cube, 1 Zoo. The 12 Hunters, 10 Egg, and 2 Secret. These are lineups that are not super favored against Rogue. Either Quest or Odd, and I think a lot of them, you look at them, you can see a Rogue ban is pretty obvious. When you look at the Rogues, 5 Odd and 5 Quest, it's definitely split right down the middle, and the lineups that we're seeing here kind of separate what they target. Because you look at the second place lineup, Taunt Druid, Egg Hunter, Shutterwalk Shaman, Even Warlock. That lineup right there cannot beat Quest Rogue. I think you're probably banning Rogue every single time there. I wouldn't be surprised actually if Oot did the same thing. Right? Taunt Druid, Egg Hunter, Quest Rogue, Cube Warlock, you're probably banning Rogue there, right? Maybe. What do you guys think?
Sorry, I didn't hear the question. I was listening to
Taylor. The winning lineup, Taunt Druid, Egg Hunter, Quest Rogue, Cube Warlock, you ban Rogue there every time, right?
Yeah, if it's... Yep, even if it's Odd Rogue.
Yeah.
Quest and Odd Rogue. Q-Block gets slammed by Odd Rogue.
And even Warlock isn't better.
Yeah, it's... Well...
I would rather be the Rogue than the Even Warlock there. I think that...
definitely.
So, I think what we're seeing here...
Couldn't you ban Aggro Mage?
You could if there were any mages, but there are only 3 in the entire tournament. In the top 16.
So it's a little flexible whenever you're building this, depending on what you want to ban, but you're definitely planning on Quest or Odd, just banning the Rogue. And then, Aggro Mage makes sense too.
And if you look as well at the Shamans, there were 8 Shamans brought and 7 Shutterwalks. 7 Shutterwalk Shaman along with the 1 Even. It's such a huge transition from what we were looking at before, and I think this is a lot of anti-Druid builds. Ban Rogue, beat Druid. That's what you see when you see 10 Malygos Druids and 7 Shutterwalks. That screams that pretty loud and clear as to what players were targeting. There were only 2 Odd Warriors, there were 2 Odd Paladins, There were 3 tempo mages, and that's it. No priest to speak of. So it's kind of fascinating to see how quickly the Conquest meta has shifted from the full aggro we saw last week. Full aggro doesn't really have a hold here. There was only 1 Zoo Warlock in the top 16. And that's a really major change.
Ender, I think, was the only one that brought a full aggro lineup. That was... I think he was the one that brought Token Druid, Zoo, Odd Paladin, Tempo Mage.
Yep. Yeah, and that lineup is targeted pretty hard here. The Egg Hunters are pretty diverse. They're not usually great at dealing with aggro, but it doesn't feel like a deck that's super unfavored against anything. And
yeah,
all
Egg
these other
Hunter
decks-
feels like the deck you bring just because it's good. It's just like really powerful, and then it's like not terrible against anything, you know? It's not like gonna auto lose to many matchups, so you have game like in a lot of places. So it feels like it's just kind of a shoe-in just because of the broken stuff it can do really early.
Yeah. So kind of interesting to see this meta will keep evolving, or maybe the word we're looking for is rotating. Because it's going to be a lot of the same decks that we've seen before, but in different configurations and different volumes. None of these are brand new decks, but this composition of a top 16 is definitely newer to us. So it's the sort of thing that it's kind of curious to see how we switched from Token Druid and Zoo lineups being so rampant to double Taunt Druid and double Egg Hunter in the finals. With Quest Rogue and Cube Warlock versus Shutterwalk Shaman and Even Warlock, it's definitely a really big transition from what we've seen before. We've got a couple of cool games to watch as well. I'm going to talk about Tom 60229 versus Casie. This is game 4 of their match in the elimination round. Now, this is the Malagos Druid Mirror. Starts off slow. It's a longer game. Both players do very little early on. Double Hero Power Pass on turn 2. Tom has Twig on turn 4. And interestingly enough, Casie plays Florist on 7, only hitting a Faceless Manipulator. Now, Floop, when it gets discounted, keeps that discount, I think, still. Even though the rules have changed a little bit. But a 0-mana Face is still very powerful. Interestingly enough, Tom plays a turn 8 Lich King, and Casie says, I'm going to take that with Faceless. I'm going to copy it, and use Swipe and Spellstone to empty my hand out for this UI that I'm going to have next turn, along with the Wild Growth. Gets himself to 9 mana. Next turn he'll have 10. He has UI with 3 cards in hand, or 4 cards in hand, and he just wants to play it out. And he gets a Doom Pact at the end of the turn from the free Lich King that he got. Now Tom has to naturalize it to make sure that UI doesn't stay relevant, but it gives Casie Malfurion, gains some armor, makes some spiders. Tom had that Twig. Remember we talked about that on turn 4. He pops it to have quite the turn. Spellstone one of your spiders, Alex you, pop the Twig, UI the other one, and play an Arcane Tyrant. Pretty nice turn, but 9 cards in hand means naturalize burns a couple, including an Arcane Tyrant and a Moonfire. In the Malagos Mirror, you really don't want one of your Moonfires getting burned. So there's also a Spreading Plague, there's also an Arcane Tyrant, and Casie has a decent board, 3 Scarabs and a 4/4. But Tom has 4 minions. He's got the 5/5, he's got 2 Scarabs, and he's got the 4/4 Arcane Tyrant. He says, you know what? We're branching paths, +2 attack. We're getting in there. Kind of an interesting board state, but only 2 survive the next turn because Casie can finally play that UI. He has to use a Moonfire to not overdraw, but he's able to clean up 2 of those minions, leaving only a Scarab and an Arcane Tyrant. Now Tom says, I got a Floop in hand. Naturalize already been played. I'm going to play my Malagos. And I'm going to trade in and leave only my 2 minions on board. I got Malagos and I got 1 Scarab. Remember that Doom Pact? Well, that Doom Pact's pretty good. It burns a Nourish, it burns a Tyrant. Lower in fatigue, but still kind of okay. And Casie makes kind of a cool play here. He double Wild Growths, keeps both excess manas in hand, just in case he needs to draw cards later if he really needs a Malagos. He just has these 2 excess manas, he's holding on to them. Plays a Twig next turn. Swings in. Following turn, he gets Alexstrasza. Tom is down to 23. Casey's been gaining armor the whole time, he's at 55. A Naturalize on the Alex, it gets rid of a Spellstone, but Casey's just getting closer to Floop, which is the last card in his deck, pretty far ahead in terms of life. Tom draws his Malfurion, only a couple cards left in his deck. Casie hits Fatigue first. Instead of playing Mally, Pop, Twig, Floop, he actually goes for the Lich King. Not going for the big Mally play. He baits out, well, he thinks he's baiting out a Swipe. He actually got the Flooped Malagos from Tom and a Death and Decay. And Casey's able to swing right back. Malagos. Swing. Floop. Swipe Moonfire. I'm at 47. You're at 10. And even though he got to fatigue first, Casie was able to take the game with Frostmourne, Hero Power, and Naturalize on the following turn for exact lethal. Pretty cool to see the swings back and forth here. And Casie was playing aggressively to get to the bottom of his deck, but also was holding those Naturalizes until he was sure it was able to burn cards, whereas Tom had to use them a little bit more aggressively. I think the play that I really enjoyed here was the free Lich King and the removal, identifying that you don't have to go for the super big combo turn, just kind of keeping that pressure on throughout the game. And I liked what Tom did with the Branching Pass for +2 attack on 4 minions. I think if he wasn't facing down removal, that could have very well turned around the game and whittled down Casey's defenses. It just didn't end up working out. So that's game one. Here the game I want to talk about. JustSaiyan versus Zheming, and this is another what's the play. I had Bot and Appa do some homework before. So, it's Quest Rogue versus Odd Rogue. JustSaiyan's on the Quest Rogue. Zheming's on the Odd Rogue. Turn 1 Quest, turn 2 Dagger, turn 3 Mimic Pod, versus turn 1 Mole, turn 2 Dagger. Now, the Odd Rogue hand is a little funky. Hench Clan Thug is good. Fungal, Double Deckhand, Coin, and Giggling Inventor. Versus, well, I'm not actually going to tell you what the Quest Rogue has yet. But turn 3 Mimic Pod is good. Single Wax comes down, JustSaiyan takes it slow. Just a Wax Elemental and Redagger. Zheming goes in pretty aggressively. Double Deckhand brings Saiyan down to 15. And then JustSaiyan plays Giggling Inventor. And uses his dagger to drop down to 13. Kill a 2-1. And now we're at the play. Here's what I want to look at. Alright, so Zheming's turn. Zheming's board. He's got a dagger with 1 health, 1 durability. He's got a 5/5 hench, a 1/3 dire mole, 2/1 deckhand. The hand is Argent Squire, SI7, Double Fungalmancer, Giggling Inventor, and Coin. Opponent's on 13. The opponent's board is 2 1/2 Annoyatrons with Divine Shields and 1 Giggling Inventor. Dagger on 1 durability. And as far as what's in the hand, there has been 1 card that has been kept since the mulligan that is still in the hand, and 1 card that was drawn on turn 2 still in the hand. Everything else is relatively recent. So, Appa, what was your play that you came down to before the show?
So this is what I was talking about when Bodicus was talking about hand tracking. And this is why it's very, very important to keep track of what your opponent keeps in their mulligan and what they draw and when. Because, well, we'll get to this in a second, that my prediction wasn't exactly right. As to what they had in their hand, my play ended up being right for a slightly different reason. So there's a card they kept in their mulligan, and this is open deck list. So if I'm Quest versus Odd Rogue, if I'm the Quest Rogue player, I'm probably going to be looking to keep Prep in my opening hand, because prepping out of Vanish and prepping out the Quest are really important there. And another card that's important to keep is Sonya, because that card's really, really good in Quest Rogue, and one of your ways to kind of swing back unfavorable matchups. But they only run 1 out of 29, whereas Prep is 2 out of 29, so it's more likely that you have Prep, and then the combination of that paired with they also kept a card on turn 2, I would put them on having Prep and Vanish in their hand, with Prep being the opening card and Vanish being the second. And I was actually kind of pleasantly surprised with myself that my hand reading skills haven't deteriorated that much, because Hat threw this to us, and I just kind of went over this while I was putting chicken nuggets on a plate to throw in the microwave, and I did it in what would be under the turn timer. So I put my opponent, if I'm the Odd Rogue, on Prep Vanish. So my play is play Ardent Squire, SI7 the one of the minions, and then kill everything. And not go face, just full trade, quote unquote, lose 5 damage with the Hench Clan Thug. Because if you present a board of a 6/5 Thug, a 1/2 Dire Mole, a 1/1 Ardent Squire, and a SI7 agent, The SI7 not only punishes the Vanish because it's a cheaper minion to play after Vanish, and then also gets to combo damage to their face as an added punish. It also just forces them to have it anyways, because you're representing lethal if they don't have it. So you play this big wide board, you kill off their stuff, you end up playing around Sonya in the process, and then they're dead next turn if they don't have Vanish. So this is you're pretty much putting your opponent in check at this point. If we're using chess terms, you just like kill all their stuff, present this board, and you say check, and then they have to have a response, and if they don't, they're dead.
Bodicus?
So when I initially looked at the photo, I assumed that the one card they kept in hand was Sonya. Figured that is the most likely card. But when Appa said prep, that also made a lot of sense. So putting him on one of those two cards. My initial read was trying to make our board as sticky as possible. And so initially I had thought to play Fungal Mancer to make all our minions good. But then Appa thought of the play of the SI7 agent, and after he said that, I kind of agreed with him. I thought that sounded like a much better play. But I was trying to my thought process was trying to preserve the Celsi deckhand because I kind of figured that a Vanish might be coming. But once we found the line of killing all of their stuff so that Sonya doesn't matter, it made a lot of sense. And even if they have the Vanish play, then you can follow up with either a Fungal Mancer turn. You just have a lot of really good plays. The follow up the turn to follow up the Vanish. So I really I came to like Appa's play a lot more than I liked my play.
So, going back to when I said I would tell you what the Quest Rogue's hand was, well, that opening card was in fact Sonya, and the card drawn on turn 2 was Valera. We know that a Wax Elemental was kept in the opening hand, and the turn 3 Mimic Pod got 2 more Wax Elementals. And Zheming made a judgment call. Said, I'm going to use Argent Squire and SI, and back in with and the dagger, SI down one of the Annoyatrons. I'm going to go face for 6. Play Saiyan on present the following turn. And he left Giggling Inventor alive. And Saiyan top decked a Glacial Shard and went Sonya, attacking with my Giggling Inventor, replay it for 1 mana, play Wax Elemental, play Glacial Shard, end your tournament. The next turn, he had more Wax Elementals. He got back more Annoyatrons, he got back a 1 mana Giggling Inventor, and he got back Scale Hide after attacking with it for 4 times. Just built this completely impenetrable board. And Zheming looks at his hand. It is double Fungal Mancer, Giggling Inventor, and Baku. That hand does not beat Sonya behind 3 Bubble Taunts, and he conceded the game. He was visibly defeated. As soon as he saw the Sonya come down, his head was in his hands, and so it's kind of an interesting judgment call. Gia said in the cast that it was very ballsy play to say, if you don't have Sonya, then I probably kill you. But I think Appa's play was safer. Very hard to come up with under pressure, but it ended up being the decision that allowed JustSaiyan to progress in the tournament and kept Zheming from doing so.
Yeah, I really cannot stress enough how much pressure there is playing on camera. I've done it once, and the time I did it, I managed to forget to hero power before I played a Maelstrom Portal. I forgot to hero power for spell damage, or to try and get spell damage before Maelstrom Portal. That's like how much stuff you're thinking about, and just like how much added pressure is on you just mentally, and you just kind of feel all the eyes on you at once. So even just basic fundamentals, you can just really skip just because of the pressure that you're under. So definitely not one to fault players for making small mistakes like this, because after doing it even one time, it's rough. It can be rough.
So judgment call that didn't end up working out. JustSaiyan progressed in the tournament and added yet another top 16 to his profile for the year. And that does it for our games to watch. Definitely recommend checking those both out. Coming soon, we've got the Fall Champs this weekend. Starts on the 11th and should be running through the entire weekend with the full casting team. We're going to be talking about that in Decksplanations, actually. We've got the Phoenix Cup going on. It's being run by Bemi, and Wicked Good is actually casting some of it. The playoffs are in 2 weeks on the 20th. This is at USH Tournaments, a Phoenix Cup Season 1. We've got RBG Manusho versus Blitzchung. We've got Donnie DK versus Phenom. We've got Zamos versus Swagaway Tomlock. And we've got Language Hacker versus Sehun. So pretty cool tournament lineup there. Definitely check them out. And our Listener League. And that's all we've got for tournaments. And now we're going to turn it over to Appa for Decksplanations.
Well, I guess you like my moves there. You look concerned.
Ops going off. That looked like a sped up GIF.
Nope, those are just my.
I would not want to move that fast.
Kind of regretting it after the fact. But so for Decksplanations this week, we didn't want to. Bodicus is slowly gyrating in his chair. It's kind of like a quarter of the speed I was moving. We didn't want to talk about a specific deck or. There's a fly on my microphone. Okay, Hat, you can edit this out. This God, go.
Thank you for permission. I was going to do it anyway. Don't you worry.
Yes. So for Decksplanations this week, we didn't want to discuss a specific deck or strategy or anything like that. There was a lot of discussion on Reddit and in the Twitter community about the Vicious Syndicate report. And so we wanted to take some time to decide to digest and process and talk about that. And then we also wanted to kind of highlight HCT Fall Championships and the players that will be playing and kind of give a little bit of a preview show for it. Because I don't think we've really done enough of that. And as a podcast trying to make the competitive side of the game more accessible, I think it would be good if we give a rundown of basically Fall Champs, what it is for people who haven't watched HCT tournaments before, who's playing, where they're from, their lineups, all that kind of stuff. So, but first, let's get into the Vicious Syndicate report. Hat, do you actually want to? So, I did not read the full thing. I skimmed it a lot, and I looked at the graphs, and I understood what they were kind of presenting to us. But do you want to kind of take it and give us the TLDR on what the article was and what the kind of Reddit post they made about it was? Because I'm sure you were more involved in reading than I was, and probably more involved in like behind the scenes stuff. And if not, then just take it anyways.
Okay. Yeah, I was not involved at all in the creation of this other than enjoying it. But so the article here, it's called Meta Polarity and its Impact on Hearthstone. And this is kind of a digestion. It's actually framed as a way to figure out why there might be loss of interest in Hearthstone through different metrics, and they specifically link streamer viewership, Google Trend search patterns, and games tracked in Data Reaper. And they're very clear. They say we cannot claim with 100% certainty there is a decline in player population, but we can see signs of possible loss of interest. And they talk about there are issues close to the community's heart that have been neglected, the primary one being lack of new features to freshen up the game. We're not here to discuss that. We're here because despite that looking healthy on the surface, the meta has a glaring problem that cannot be fully grasped by deck win rates and play rates alone. And they talk about polarizing matchups. They developed a metric to measure meta polarity, and the way they determined it, say they have a 60 to 40 matchup between deck A and deck B, right? The matchup differential is 20%. 60 minus 40, 20%. To make an aggregate measure, they take the matchup differentials of every matchup in the meta that VS has data for, and calculates the weighted average of their value based on how popular it is. So, decks that get played more, they impact this more. Decks that get played less, impact this less. A meta polarity, for example, of 16% means that the average matchup in the meta is 58 to 42%. 58 minus 42, 16%. So higher numbers means more polarization in the average matchup. There's an alternative measure of it. I'm not going to go into the math here. Basically, this metric measures the difference between a deck's good matchups and bad matchups, right? Larger numbers means more polarization, smaller numbers means less. So, there's a very pretty graph here. We start off, the least polarized meta that they have tracked is the Whispers of the Old God meta at 10.04%. One Night in Karazhan pre-nerf was actually pretty close to that because there was only one deck played, and that had a pretty close to 50-50 matchup against itself. It's mid-range Shaman. There's also Mean Streets of Gadgetzan post-nerf was down to about 10.6. Knights of the Frozen Throne post-nerf was down to 10.4. Versus, we've got some outliers. We've got Ungoro, where pre-nerf was 15.3%, post-nerf was 14.5%. We've got the post-nerf Kobolds and Catacombs, the Even Paladin Cube Warlock meta, 14.2%. And then we have the Witchwood, 18.8% polarity, post-nerf 17.9%, and the Boomsday Project, 19% meta polarity, which means the average matchup in the Boomsday meta is, what is that? That'd be 59 minus 40. It's probably about 58.5 minus 41.5, something like that. It's a pretty crazy adjustment. It means that the average matchup, you're probably favored to either win or lose by an almost 20% swing. So we look back at where we think some of these things were coming from. Ungoro, Quest Rogue, and Freeze Mage. Very polarizing. And when Quest Rogue went away, Jade Druid actually started to rise. Knights of the Frozen Throne post-nerf, that got better because Druid, Rogue, and Priest were all top decks with good spread of matchups, with a balanced spread. Raza Priest, Tempo Rogue, and Jade Druid post-nerf all had a good amount of balance. But the balance changes in Kobolds. Saw an end of Raza Priest, an end of Tempo Rogue, and the polarity continued. Year of the Raven, when Witchwood came back, we saw a big jump. Quest Rogue came back around that time. But even when that got displaced by the post-nerf Witchwood metagame, still a very high polarity. So, the summary here, you haven't been imagining things, the game has become the most polarizing it's ever been. And there's some tables underneath when we look at which decks are the problem, which decks are contributing to this. The top decks, I'll read the top 5 here. Odd Warrior is number 1 with a 31.42% polarity. Quest Rogue is number 2, 28%. Togwaggle Druid, 24%. Control Warlock, 23%. Alanath Mage, 22.7%. Not all of these are quest decks. Not all of these are odd or even decks. But all of these are decks with highly polarized matchups that change a lot based on what you were playing against. Appa, you want it from here?
Yeah, I mean, this report was really, really interesting. And I think the more interesting part about this was the response from the developers. In the Reddit post where Vicious Syndicate posted this, Mike Dene commented, and with a notoriously controversial take on this. He says, "I'm glad you made a few comments explaining that polarized does not mean bad. Your article reads quite differently, though. You should probably discuss pros and cons of it so that players don't all jump on the zero polarity bandwagon. A
Should
good
have stopped
version."
there. Should have
Yep.
stopped there.
Yep. He goes on to say, "A good version of this article talks about why it is good and why it is bad objectively. I'm sure if every deck was a mid-range minion-focused deck, people would be complaining about how boring the meta was." The comment under that is, I think, is my favorite comment of the thread. It has a good version of this article in quotes, followed by "yikes."
Yikes is correct. I wanted to name this section of this "A Tale of Two Responses" because I much prefer
Someone
Ixar's
keep Mike
response.
Dene away from Reddit. So he does like kind of make a good point that this was a report to find out why it's so polarized, and they didn't really focus on why polarization could be good and like why it's bad and why it kind of sucks right now. But I mean, that wasn't really the report, like the point of the article. The point was to be like, was to convince people like why you feel like a certain way, back it up with numbers, which I mean, I feel like they did well. But Ixar responded to a question in the Reddit thread. The question is, Dean, I was wondering if you saw. No, this was a Twitter comment where somebody tagged him. Sorry. It says, Dean, I was wondering if you saw Vicious Syndicate's report on metagame polarization. It's a very interesting read. And he has a big, long thread that I have basically copy and pasted and formatted to make it easier to read in the show notes. But I'm not going to go over all of it because it's like 13 tweets in a row. It's super long. Basically, the TLDR is he saw it. It's an interesting topic. He said he doesn't think their data aligns, but he goes on to clarify that that doesn't mean that it's wrong. He clarified that the last time he looked at the data, it didn't quite look like what Vicious Syndicate had, but he's going to go back and look at it and kind of see where their metrics differ from Vicious Syndicate and stuff like that. He also says that he does agree that it's that it does feel polarized, but he points out that it could be because Vicious Syndicate has a pretty heavy emphasis on snapshotting legend as opposed to all ranks like Blizzard looks at. And kind of what a chunk of this is about is that you don't want like 50% polarization. You do want a little bit of polarization where deck choice is important and is a contributing factor to win, but you don't want that to be the most important thing. You want interactions within a game that can swing a matchup in your favor, and that's not really where we are right now. And he says, on one hand, I totally agree that making cards that generate infinite value, deal infinite damage, etc., can be dangerous. But on the other hand, I totally disagree that players hate Death Knights, Jade decks, or even odd decks. He says, I don't believe it's simple. It's as simple as don't make these types of cards, and it's a more complex problem to solve. And then he lists 3 points. He says, 1, we want deck decisions to matter, metagames to shift. For every deck out there, there should be a deck that has a strong matchup versus it. Number 2, we want gameplay decisions to matter. You shouldn't feel like the only decision that mattered was the deck that you chose to play with, though it should be one of the decisions that mattered. And number 3, how do we accomplish that without being too limited with the types of cards we can make? We should be able to make cards that generate extreme value or do extreme amounts of damage. They're fun. Some players and some players enjoy the dreaminess of that type of strategy. So he's saying that there should be effectively polarized matchups, but the level of polarization is what is tricky to get right. And I think what he's a way I can explain it easily is like 60-40 matchups are good, but 80-20 matchups are not. And he wants 60-40s to exist because...
And 50-50s are not also equally not as good as 80-20s.
Yeah, whenever the metagame was 50-50, that's when I stopped playing Hearthstone. Because that was Jade Druid against Jade Druid, and that was horrendous. So he wants there to be polarization in the frame that you can flip a matchup into your favor if you play it well, and your micro decisions in the game are like... I'm blanking on the term. I do this all the time. I just like start talking and then my brain goes faster than my mouth. If the decisions you make in the game are... Somebody save me. I'm drowning.
Relevant.
There you go. Thank you. Thank you, Hat. But he also wants macro decisions to matter. Like what deck you play, like what tech cards you put in your deck, like things outside of the one-on-one game that you have with your opponent. They want that to matter too, and that should. That happens in every healthy card game. Deck decisions matter because polarization is just a thing that's going to exist. And Kibler responded to this thread, and he said, I'd argue that the polarity problem is about frequency, degree, and ability to influence. Highly polarized matchups that happen often, that don't have many ways to shift it / interact, causes shift / interact with the causes of polarization feel unfun. And then he goes on to say cards like Quests and Gen and Baku are polarizing because they influence every game and aren't answerable. And Ixar says, I don't disagree. The question is, how do you look at all three of those factors, weigh them against each other, and determine what is good or bad? It has to be a judgment call based on specific cases rather than a hard rule. So, as you can tell, Ixar's response is way better, leagues better than Mike Dene's response. He sounds like a sensible human being, and Mike Dene sounds like he woke up, stubbed his toe, spilled milk in his lap, and then like tripped down the stairs and was like, this is a terrible article. A good version of this talks about this.
Yeah, the wording on Dene's response could have been tuned a little bit better, I think. But I really liked Ixar's response to it. While I don't necessarily agree with everything he said, one thing I very much agreed with was that I don't want them to be too limiting with the types of cards they can make. They should be able... I do like that they're willing to create cards that generate extreme value or extreme amounts of damage. It's just obviously a matter of tuning it. And I totally agree that I feel like there's a lot of hate being thrown towards towards Death Knights in particular. And I think Death Knights were an incredible inclusion to the game. It's just a matter of getting them to the point where they've kind of gone now, versus obviously some of the more broken ones when it first came out. And it's so hard to implement something like that into the game and not have it go wrong, at least in some aspects. And I hope that they continue to do cards like that in the future, as long as they're tuned more towards the level of Hagatha and Dr. Boom.
And this is complicated, right? Because we've talked about this multiple times in the show. The things going on with Hearthstone right now aren't just about the meta. And we'll say it, and we'll keep saying it, and keep saying it. There's things that make the meta stand out as a target for our projections. What? Well, what?
You're just like lagging on our end, and you sound like a robot sometimes.
So we're gonna keep saying it and keep saying it and keep.
Let me see if I can change.
We've been dropping some Mr. Destructoids in chat.
I see that. I can only hear my local call. Let me see if I can actually change the server for this call. I don't know if I can actually do that.
I mean, it's fine. You just cut out on some words. I'm sure it's not a big deal.
Yeah, as long as it's good on the recording.
Yeah, well, my recording's local. So this is... The meta is a projection of what people feel about Hearthstone, and there's really... I don't think that this particular environment would be offensive compared to the J Druid meta of pre-nerf KFT. If you took this and you dropped this there instead, you had this metagame instead, I think people would be thrilled. And, they... Obviously, it's not a perfect comparison. There's no way to really know, but metagame polarization, if this is the biggest problem we have in Hearthstone, I think we'd actually be in a pretty good place. I don't think it's the biggest problem we have in Hearthstone. And if I look at this Vicious Syndicate article, Schwal in our Discord was talking about this for a while, and I think I agree with a lot of the points. The conclusions that were made with this data were kind of funky. The conclusions that were made were pointing at the Quest and Ungoro, the Death Knights in KFT, the Mana Cheating in KNC, and Gen and Baku and Witchwood. And one of the ending comments here, we urge the Hearthstone team to learn from this polarizing experience and tone down the elements that enable it. Infinite value, infinite life, and infinite damage are dangerous. Whoa, hold on a second. I don't disagree with that sentence. But I don't know how we got from the data we had at the beginning of the article to that sentence.
Yeah, it's like you're standing on one side of a canyon, and it's like, this is how I feel. And then on the other side of the canyon is like, this, and this are dangerous. And they just threw a bunch of stats down the canyon and hope it made a bridge. and then it just didn't make a bridge.
Well,
So you
like-
can't get from point A to point B.
I can kind of see where they inferred that these cards and these mechanics were problematic, and I'm not going to say I disagree with all of the conclusions, just it's really hard to make the connection that we have a highly polarized metagame and it's because of these cards, unless they have more data that wasn't shared, or unless it was an inference, in which case I'd really like to see the work behind getting these conclusions, outside of saying, here's this data, and here's what we think is causing this data. It's really hard to connect those things, and I wouldn't be surprised if Ixar's response was kind of alluding to that. While I agree with the general point that Vicious Syndicate is trying to illustrate that the meta is highly polarized and that doesn't feel fun, I think it's really hard to reach the specific conclusions that were jumped to at the end here, outside of Quest and Gen and Baku, like Kibler talked about in his response, because those start in your opening hand or start the game. I get that. Starting in your opening hand and starting the game off without opportunity to interact, yes, that is by definition a polarizing experience, and the number 1 and 2 deck are Odd Warrior and Quest Rogue. But number 3 is Togwaggle Druid. Malfurion's in it, but Malfurion's in a lot of decks, and Token Druid is lower on the list. Control Warlock. Gul'dan's in it. Gul'dan's in a lot of decks. Even Warlock's lower in the list. Alaneth Mage, I get it. I think if they drew the conclusion that the polarized decks encouraged matchup waiting and warping, because Alaneth Mage is not a deck that you ever play unless you're seeing a lot of Quest Rogue, then I get that argument. I get the argument of the polarization is too extreme to allow decks with even matchup spreads to exist, but that's not what they said. And I would have liked a more measured conclusion, given how scrupulous and methodical the data presented seemed to be, for the conclusions to be not really shown how they were generated. Just kind of, it's something that stands out to me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm pretty much right there with what you said. Like, I agree with a lot of what they said, but I don't think they presented it in a way that leads you to that conclusion based on what's shown. And that was actually pointed out to me in the Discord by Schwal. Like, I was reading it and I was like, I didn't even really read the conclusion, but he kind of pointed out that there were some formatting issues in the article that were, I mean, that's a little nitpicky, but I agree that there are. And then kind of basing your conclusion on this without really connecting the two is a little iffy. As an English major, I'm just like, come on, man, you gotta give supporting facts. Come on. You need like a connecting paragraph between the big body and the conclusion. But yeah, I wanted to give a shout out to Schwal because I thought he brought up some good points and did it in a pretty good way in Discord. So yeah. Any thoughts, Bodikus? You're just kind of giving us the old side eye over there.
No, I'm trying to read more into it. I think you guys just had good points, honestly. I don't really know where else to go with this article. I'm really glad that it was created, and I think it spawned a lot of great discussion from it. But yeah, it's hard to nitpick because I think on a whole, there's just a lot of good stuff from this article, and the minor issues with it, I think, don't really take away from the goal of it, and I'm kind of glad we were able to talk about it.
Yeah,
I didn't want to go. Yeah, I didn't want to go like too much into it because I feel like a lot of it would be repeating a lot of what's already been said. But I did want to definitely take a look at the article itself and then the developer responses, where I think the most interesting thing after like the release. So definitely wanted to take some time to kind of digest and process those.
Yeah, and the points that I shared, I want to make sure I'm clear. I do believe this article was a wonderful thing to be written, needed to be written, and the data is absolutely relevant and kind of terrifying. The only thing that I would caution is that players parse it themselves and draw their own conclusions. And really, the people that need to use data like this are the game designers, which none of us are. So I'm curious to see what you all as listeners think are leading to these aspects of metapolarity. Maybe you agree with the conclusions in the article, maybe you have your own, maybe it's a mix of both. I'd be really curious to hear from anyone that's listening about where you think this is coming from. So I don't think that the conclusions made in the article are completely wrong, it's just I have trouble following the logic given the formatting of how everything was presented.
Yeah, again, agree with Hat here. So if we don't really have too much else to say, you'll want to move on to fall champs.
Yes.
All right. So HCT fall champs. So for those of you that may have not really gotten into the tournament scene, or may have not be as plugged in, or may have not even watched a tournament before, so let's just kind of go over what the fall champs are. So HCT stands for Hearthstone Championship Tour, and I actually found out yesterday that the arena writer for the Tempest Storm videos didn't even know what HCT stood for until like last week. So I figured it'd be a good thing to just kind of get that out of the way. It stands for Hearthstone Championship Tour, and it is the kind of tournament circuit for Hearthstone, which leads up to the World Championships at the end of the year. And for this, I mean, we've covered like playoffs and all that stuff, but basically top 4 players from each region's playoffs get seeded into each season's like end of the season championship, and then the top 4 of this championship will be seeded into Worlds. So for this, there are 16 players. There are 4 from the Americas. We have Bloodyface, Language Hacker, and JustSaiyan from the United States, and we have Tincho from Argentina. And something I think we can all do a little bit better on, which I've noticed recently, is I always say the NA server, and that's not really true. It's the America server, which is North America and South America, because there are a lot of good South American players, and I think there's just a really weird natural divide that comes up, because most games actually have an NA server and a South American server, but for Hearthstone, it's just the Americas. So we have people from the United States, and then we also have Tincho from Argentina. We have 4 people from the EU. We have Renman from Russia. We have Moyan and Sintalal from Germany, and Hatul from Israel. I hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly. If not, please don't hate me. We have 4 from APAC, which is the Asia Pacific region. And that is Akumaker from Australia, Blood Trail from Taiwan, Rivius from South Korea, and his tag is Dak Rivius, but I say Rivius because I believe Dak is just the tag of the team that he's a part of. And a lot of players will do this, like one of the next people we're going to talk about. There's 4 players from China. There's Trunks, Lion King. I don't know how to pronounce this. I'm going to try my best. Caimiao, Caimiao. I'm not really sure how to pronounce that, but I tried my best. And then Island Cat. And I've something that a lot of Asian players do, whether they be South Korean, Chinese, Taiwanese, what have you, they'll put their team tag in front of their name. Like Lion King's in-game is actually GOE Lion King, and I believe that's the team he plays for, and Rivius is DAC, Doc Rivius, or Gyong is Doc Gyong. So I just kind of try and cut off the tags whenever I can. So that's why I'm saying Rivius, not Dak Rivius. And then the tournament meta for this tournament. So all 16 players brought Druid. Are we really surprised?
Not even a little bit. I'm a little surprised at the specific decks they chose, but
yeah, the archetypes are a little interesting, but I'm not really surprised that all 16 brought Druid. It is the most brought class, followed right behind with Warlock. But for Druid, there are 9 Malagus Druids, 4 Taunt Druids, 2 Token Druids, and 1 big Ramp Druid. For Hunter, we have 5 Egg Hunters. Egg is the cube egg recruit hunter. We're just condensing that to Egg because there's like 6 different tags for it. I'm just going to call it Egg Hunter. There's 1 secret aggro hunter, and there is one Spell Hunter. And the Secret Aggro Hunter is the one with Dire Moles, Razor Maws, Bear Sharks, Subject 9, all that kind of stuff. There are 4 mages. All 4 of them are Tempo Aggro Mage. There are 2 priests, and they are both Benedictus Mind Blast Control Priest. Anybody?
I'm sure they have reasons for doing what they're doing. I just don't know what they are.
I will tell you in a second when we look at their lineups. There are 13 rogues, there are 9 odd rogues, and 4 quest rogues, 7 shamans, all Shutterwalks, 14 warlocks, 6 even warlocks, 6 zoo warlocks, a control warlock, and 1 cube lock, and 1 single warrior deck. And it is a tempo odd cube warrior.
I'm sorry.
I'll
what?
let that one sit and
I'm-
marinate for a second.
I'm sorry.
Have you seen the list?
I'm glad that there is only one odd warrior.
Because it's
Because
very
we
odd.
we don't have to worry about a mirror match.
Okay.
Although I
What?
am worried about the Benedictus control.
Have y'all
priests.
seen the list?
I can tell you for sure there will never be a mirror match with this list because it is an odd warrior with 1 vicious fledgling and 2 Fester Root Hulks. For those that don't know, that is the 5 mana 2/7 warrior class card. After a friendly minion attacks, gain +1 attack. It includes itself. And what the heck? What is going on?
Two
One
faceless
town crier.
manipulators.
One town crier.
Yep.
That only gets.
So
gets
we have
double-
the classic Odd Warrior hits of Shield Slam, Gluttonous Ooze, Iron Beak Owls, Zeliax, Azalina Soul Thief, Dr. Boom, Super Collider, next to our classic Pirate Warrior cards of Frothing Berserker. We got Darius Crowley. We got Fester Root Hulk.
Well, you see, okay.
Carnivorous
So
Cube.
it's odd warrior, so you can't play smashing fun. You gotta get your 2/7 in there somehow. You make it cost 1 less mana. It attacks for a bunch sometimes. I mean,
And this deck doesn't
Gotta
play
go.
Giggling Inventor. Doesn't play it. But plays.
don't need it.
I hope not, because you don't have it. And it does play double cube, double faceless.
Yeah, so I've actually racked my brain. Well, I'm just gonna stop right there. No, I've racked my brain a lot trying to figure out what the heck he's trying to beat by bringing this because I have no idea. I've never seen this played. I've never played with it. I'm not really sure I want to play with this. I don't want to have to craft Fester Root Hulks.
1 vicious fledgling. Why? Why? In
'Cause
what
he had
matchup?
29 cards
In
and
what
he wanted to
matchup
get
do you
aggressive.
say? Well, it's not a great top deck, but I don't want it in my opening hand that often, so I guess I'll run 1.
I mean, against Quest Rogue, you just keep the fledgling and hope it goes.
Well, yeah, so
Oh.
the idea is in the games where you start with coin, you want the fledgling.
Is
but
Appa
the
frozen for you?
games- Yeah, and it's a great face for him to be frozen on.
Just completely
So-
frozen.
So when we're on coin, we want the fledgling so we can coin fledgling on turn 2. But you don't want it on the games where you have to just play it out on 3 because it's probably just going to die. So I'm not actually. I have no idea what this deck is. I mean, is the goal to like hero power on turns 2 and 4, and then you can play your Fester Root Hulk, and then play your cube on the Fester Root Hulk and Shield Slam your cube, so that you can get 2 Fester Root Hulks because they get big real fast.
Yeah. I guess that's it. So we're gonna pause for a second here. Hey, live listeners, appreciate your patience. Appa is power surged.
You know, we could just redo this whole episode. I'd be good with that. Then we can just skip the whole analyze or whatever the word was.
Oh
that
no, we're
I-
keeping that. That's staying. But yeah, Appa's
Yeah.
local recording is probably dead.
Rip.
That's a bummer. Oh, something happened. Well, now we've got a spinning circle. That's progress. Cool. Well,
No, isn't that spinning circle you?
I have 2 spinning circles.
Oh, I only have 1.
Or no, his is just a black screen. Oh, I guess that is my spinning circle. Yeah, he's just gone. Feels bad, man. Well, I'm glad that Appa brought us this deck list to talk about because I don't know what's happening here. Like, it's so weird for there to be this hybrid minion-based deck with all this
I
removal.
know, like, Zalay was doing a little bit with the Tempo Warrior, just adding Frothing Berserkers to Odd Warrior to have a shot against Quest Rogue, but this is kind of a new level of... It's the next level of that, which might just be bad.
I mean, this is really next level. Yeah.
It's pretty far next level.
Well, it is the only warrior in the tournament. And that's Hatul. He's playing... I'm trying to figure out what his lineup is trying to do here, because we look at his lineup overall, and it's Big Druid, Spell Hunter, Control Priest, and Odd Warrior. It's a very strange Odd Warrior.
What he's trying to do is bring a bunch of off-meta decks.
Well, sure.
And very far off meta decks.
Yeah, and
because Big Druid, Control Priest, Odd Tempo, Cube Warrior just screams, I'm doing something different.
And he's actually playing, it's a Dragon Priest. It doesn't have the combo. It does have Mind Blast. It's playing 1 Akanai. It's playing double Free from Amber. And it's got Scale Worms, a Cobalt Scalebane, double Twilight Drake, 1 Primordial Drake. Very strange. It does have Anduin, but the double Free from Amber at the top is definitely unusual. And Spell Hunter we have not seen in a while.
Double Free from Amber, whoa.
Yeah, it's kind of out of nowhere. And then the Spell Hunter list is pretty typical Spell Hunter, but what's atypical about it is that it's Spell Hunter. Like, when's the last time we've seen that deck?
Not recently. I was playing it for a bit. It's definitely good, but I think you're, as most people seem to have figured out, just better off playing Cube Hunter.
Or Secret Hunter.
Or Secret. I'm not really high on Secret Hunter, but it has its merits, I guess. I definitely lost to it earlier playing Odd Warrior, which felt real bad.
Yeah, they have Rexar.
Yeah, Rexar is beatable. Like, it definitely feels beatable as Odd Warrior, but it's not easy to beat.
Well, I'm just trying to figure out as well. He's banning Rogue every time. He can't beat Rogue, I think, with this lineup. So if you're banning Rogue, I guess he's trying to have anti-minion strategies. The Odd Warrior, the tank up, is kind of good enough against some of these Mali Druid decks, where if they're just trying to deal a bunch of damage, then you have the capability of beating that. And there is a minion package where he can kind of have a chance against like a Shutterwalk, which apparently was pretty popular, and maybe it gives you a chance against Egg Hunter.
Weird. Shutterwalk and Malagos Druid being popular is just weird to me.
I mean,
I understand Shutterwalk's a good deck, and Malagos Druid is a good deck, and I guess that's their strategy of just bring, in their minds, just 4 really good decks.
Well,
because a lot of them are playing Even Warlock too, which is another just solid good deck. But
if you're targeting ban rogue lineups, those decks beat ban rogue lineups, I think. I think what we're really looking at here is the dawn of the ban rogue lineup being a little bit on the control heavy side, being anti-minion, and these are anti-minion decks. Like, Shutterwalk beats all of those decks, and I really would not want to be...
Malagos Druid doesn't beat Odd Warrior, right?
No.
Just never.
But Odd Warrior's not being played. No one's playing Odd Warrior.
Yeah.
It's if you're...
Well, just because they're not playing it, I would have expected more people to bring it, honestly. I'm surprised more people didn't bring it.
Yeah, but we've got a good amount of Shutterwalk Shamans here. Well, I count 7 of them. And really, Hatul does not want to play against Shutterwalk under any circumstances. Like, Shutterwalk just beats
a lot of
his
people
lineup.
seem to... It feels like people just assumed that there was going to be... all the Shutterwalk Shaman tells me that people thought there was going to be Odd Warrior and thought there was going to be Big Spell Mage.
Yeah.
That used to be the reason that you brought Shutterwalk Shaman. Yeah. And you just don't see that. I guess it's okay. I felt like the Taunt Druid matchup was not really that good, and the Malagos Druid matchup was really 50-50. So it seems like it ended up being what I think is a fairly questionable pick to bring Shutterwalk Shaman. That could have paid off if more people brought the even slower decks, but it just doesn't seem to be the case.
I mean, you look at it, and we've got 7 Shutterwalk Shamans, and we've got only 4 Quest Rogues. Like, I don't know if the call was that bad. Because if you're against an Odd Rogue, you could probably leave it up if you really wanted to. Like, if you brought an anti-Quest, or a lineup that loses to Quest Rogue, and you see Odd, you can leave that up. And maybe that's the thing about these lineups, they can be flexible and not just ban Rogue every time, because you can do decently well against Odd Rogue with a lot of these decks.
Doesn't I feel like Shutterwalk would struggle against Odd Rogue in a lot of circumstances, but it's probably pretty even actually. You have Volcano, which is really good against them.
The last I looked, I thought the same thing, and then the Shutterwalk is very slightly ahead in the Odd Rogue
Of
matchup.
Odd Rogue?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I don't know. I think that there's opportunity there for that to be kind of a flexible lineup. It's the same thing we saw in HCT Singapore last week, right? So we look at Shutterwalk Shaman. It's actually 60% against Odd Rogue in the last week.
Okay.
So
That's a lot better than I assumed the matchup was, but I guess just having a hero power that puts O2s in the way that are generally stuff that you have to worry about, as well as Serenite Chain Gang and Volcano being pretty big issues for Odd Rogue. I could see it for sure,
Yeah.
especially since a lot of the Odd Rogues are likely bringing Blood Knights in their lists, so that I feel like that card is obviously pretty dead against Shutterwalk.
yeah,
Whereas in that spot before, what was in that spot before?
Blink Foxes.
Yeah, that extra value helped out a lot, and you kind of just played it out more often.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know.